your first and last name and town or county on all messages. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here tonight, and we're going to get right to it. The very first question I had is the same question that Mr. Randy Week, I think that's how you pronounce your name, sir, of Louisville, asked, and he said he'd like for each of the candidates to briefly outline their professional qualifications and how they think their experience qualifies them for the job of auditor. Ms. Coots, we'll begin with you.
All right, thank you for the question, and thank you for having me here tonight. I was raised in Western Kentucky, and I tell people that I grew up in basketball gyms, and I grew up learning that the value of showing up for others and the importance of showing up for others was extremely important. And so I've done that throughout my life as I have grown up, whether it's been on sports teams or it's been for volunteer groups or as a student leader at UK. Right now, I have been a team lead, a department chair, and on the site-based council. But no matter how involved I've gotten at my school, whether it's been inside the school or outside as an organizer for Kentucky 120 United in Louisville, I have felt like the Kentucky that I know is slowly becoming unrecognizable. And I am running because I think that some of our leaders in Frankfurt have rolled back gains in healthcare, have worked to gut public education, they have trampled workers' rights, and I think that corruption is holding us back. So I'm here because I am ready to fight corruption and make sure our government is more accountable and transparent.
And many would say your experience seems very laudable and appropriate, but maybe not specific to the office. So tell us what your qualifications are specific to the Office of State Auditor.
Well, an auditor is somebody who makes sure that taxpayer dollars are being spent in the way that they're supposed to be spent, and really making sure that somebody's hand isn't in the taxpayer cookie jar. I have a vision for the auditor's office, and what I hear whenever I hear that question about experience is, can I execute the role of the auditor's office? And I know that I can. There are hundreds of auditors in the auditor's office that are highly trained in technical skills of auditing. The deputies have to be, they're outlined by state statute to have to be auditors, and I know that because of my leadership experience that I can execute the vision for the office. If somebody that's watching wants to go to kelseydebate.com, I have strategic objectives that outline my plan, and I would invite anybody to check that and also give me feedback on what they think about my plan for the offices.
Ms. Donahue, your qualifications and experience that would lend yourself as a viable state auditor.
Thank you, Renee. First of all, I grew up in a small working-class town just outside of Louisville. My parents still live in the same house where I grew up. My dad worked in construction, and my mom worked at the Navy weapons station. I was inspired by her and by the people she worked with, so I went to Purdue, earned my degree in engineering. I came back home, and I went to work for the Navy for 20 years, where I audited multi-million-dollar weapon systems, and I managed classified intelligence contracts. I was responsible for making sure the taxpayers got their money's worth, and that our men and women in uniform had safe and effective equipment to protect our nation. Later on, I worked with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in cybersecurity and infrastructure protection. I developed a system that the FBI uses to manage domestic security information. I've been a single mom since my son Ryan was 5 years old, and in order to spend more time with him when he went into high school, I took a job with Humana in cybersecurity. And I am asked quite often, why are you running for state auditor? And all you have to do is look around. Regardless of your ideology or your party affiliation, people are losing faith in government. And the cornerstone of any democracy is people having faith in it. Faith that your government cares about you, faith that your government will effectively respond to your needs, and faith that your voices and your votes will be heard and counted. And I'm uniquely qualified to restore that faith in our Commonwealth, in our country. And under my leadership, your auditor's office will fearlessly search out waste, fraud, and abuse wherever it is and whoever's responsible for it. Since I was in my early 20s, I have stood up to billion-dollar defense contractors and the military-industrial complex, and I've always won. So the bureaucrats in Frankfurt and Matt Bevin do not scare me.
Mr. Toby, same question to you, sir.
Well, I'm the most qualified, experienced candidate for auditor with over 25 years experience actually in finance and accounting, and actually nearly 3 years in the auditor's office itself, and I'll hit the ground running. I'm in my 22nd year of being told I've exaggerated the pension crisis. I was hired specifically by Ed Hatchett to look into pensions over 20 years ago. Pensions is the number one issue that I think that's going to face the auditor's office. I served for 4 years as a trustee of the Kentucky retirement systems. I wrote a book about it called Kentucky Fried Pensions. I've been a pension expert nationally. When auditors from Utah and Maryland needed somebody, they called on me as a consultant to audit their pensions. I have a master's degree in finance and accounting, and a number of designations, chartered financial analyst, and I've attended a lot of advanced pension training with Harvard and Stanford. I got into this office because, this is an office that I really feel strongly about. 5 years ago, I helped write the legislation that made the auditor look at the KRS audit every year, or every 5 years. And when Mike Harmon came out with his half audit in December 15th, which left out an illegal trustee making illegal investments, who also happens to have given the governor a $3 million mansion for $1.5 million, that really drove me into this race, because we really need someone experienced in this job to hit the ground running on pensions.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the pension crisis in just a moment. But this follow-up question, that's a good one from Mr. Tyler Owen in Southgate, Kentucky. What do you bring to the table that current Auditor Harmon does not? And I'll begin with you, Mr. Tobey.
Auditor Harmon came in as a politician. He had no financial auditing experience going in. I do. I feel that also I will be an independent watchdog. In my book, I was critical of both Democrats and Republicans on the pension issue over the years. I will be putting taxpayers first, and I will be doing it in a professional manner as a financial professional who has done work in this office specifically and around the country.
Ms. Donahue, same question to you.
Having worked for the Navy for as many years as I did, I have several accomplishments where I have a proven track record of going after what is supposed to be done. I have worked under 2 Republican presidents and 2 Democratic presidents. They were my commander-in-chief. However, I worked for the men and women in uniform. So as auditor, I will not be afraid to go after whomever is responsible. For example, when I was working for the Navy, or in my early 20s, again, I was working on a weapon system that was being proposed to the Navy. It was going to be dangerous. It would have caused cancer in our sailors 20 years down the line. I stood up to senior management, and I said that this will be dangerous, and we did not go through with that weapon system. Years later, we were having a government shutdown, and I was overseeing a program that provided protection to our troops in Afghanistan. During the shutdown, this contract was frozen, but I went through several offices within D.C. at the Navy Yard until I found a way to make sure we continued that contract so our men and women would continue to be protected. I'm not afraid. Mike Harmon has not brought any referrals to the criminal justice system since he's been auditor. I will make sure that changes.
Same question to you, Ms. Coots, and to get to the point about that the scope of the office is much larger than pension, which we'll talk about a little bit. You've called for a special examination of education, public education, and health care. So I want you to comment on what do you mean by that, and also how do you think that you would be a better auditor than the current Republican auditor, Mike Harmon?
So first off, thank you, Tyler, for that question. One thing that I would bring to the office that's different than the current auditor is I would bring a passion for the auditor. And our problems right now in Kentucky with corruption, we're ranked by multiple scholarly experts as being the most corrupt state in the nation. They are too great to not bring passion to the office. I also argue that I'm the only candidate in the race that has a complete vision for the office. As you said, the office is about much more than just pensions. The auditor that was right before Mike Harmon was Adam Edlin, and he audited some public schools. As a JCPS teacher, I say in the last 10 years, one of the best things that has happened to our school district was the audit that Adam Edlin did, as he found a lot of inefficiency and waste being spent in central office that then led to being reorganized, and now more money is in the classroom. Again, I say that I'm in this race because in a revenue-strapped state, any dollar that's not spent or that is wasted to inefficiency is one that doesn't go to the 125 kids that are in my classroom and look back at me daily, and kids that are just like them across the Commonwealth. The first superintendent in the nation to go to jail was in Dayton, Kentucky. And so the current auditor has not gone into any other public school districts or done any audits until recently, which was, I think, within the last week, where he audited KDE.
When it comes to health care, what do you mean specifically there?
Just ensuring that money that's going for our healthcare systems is being spent as efficiently as possible. The change changes in Kentucky have been so great with the healthcare systems that we had under the previous administration and now how things are changing under Governor Bevin. It's just ensuring, again, that the role of the auditor's office is to make sure not only with waste, fraud, and abuse, but also we are being as efficient as possible.
This question from Connor Allen from Louisville. As auditor, would you investigate the use of tax incremental financing? And I'll go to you first, Ms. Donahue.
First of all, I would like to respond to the comment that we are the most corrupt state. As a lifelong Kentuckian, I take offense to that. I don't think Kentucky is the most corrupt state. I think Kentucky is better at exposing it. The recent Harvard studies that have been constantly referred to, that was a study that was based on the opinion of reporters. It was not evaluation of reported actual corruption cases. For example, Vermont has been listed as the least corrupt state in the country, but they didn't even have an ethics commission until about a year ago when they had a major scandal happen. So I don't think it's just because it isn't exposed doesn't mean it's not there. However, as auditor, I will go after those things that are criminal, the people that are the cheaters. But I'm going into it more as a way to ensure efficiencies, effectiveness, and integrity is being followed in our programs. As far as I am a problem solver. I'm an engineer. My entire 30-year career has been spent solving problems. And so that is the way I'm going to go in there and not to just be looking for people to punish.
To the question of TIF, tax incremental financing, that comes from Mr. Connor Allen. Would you investigate the use of TIF?
I will investigate anything that has to do with our taxpayer dollars. Federal, state, grants, whatever it might be. As I said, as an engineer, everything that I do is about being methodical, following the process, and systematically evaluating it. So, yes.
I want to go back to pension for just a couple of minutes if I can. And Mr. Toby, I'm going to go to you since this is an issue that you're quite familiar with. You called Auditor Harmon's audit of the Kentucky retirement systems just another partisan whitewash with minimal impact. So I want you to kind of expound on a little bit more of what the report failed to do in your view.
The biggest failure, again, was on the investment side. Senate Bill 2 brought some fiduciary responses, some laws that for the hedge funds and private equity, the offshore money in the Cayman Islands.
A couple of years ago.
A couple of years of 2017. And Auditor Harmon has not enforced or even noticed the illegal transactions made and the illegal investments that they have kept. And then also we had the illegal trustee with Mr. Ramsey, who was not a legal trustee, making these illegal investments, and he did not even note that in his audit. So that was the biggest thing. But again, when I become auditor, I will re-look at the audit and see if we've missed anything else. But that's the big thing that I noticed in the audit.
So aside from pension, what else will you do? The office has a great deal of entities that it investigates or audits.
It does. You have your regular statutory duties with the county and state that you have to do. But my other priorities would be the Yum Center in Louisville. I think the audit he did there was not complete. Fish and wildlife is another area, another incomplete audit by Auditor Harmon that I would go into extensively. And then other things will come up in education and healthcare as you go along. As I get information coming in, you'll be reacting to those. And again, I want to get back to the TIF districts. That's something I was talking to a group of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. Those are very much being abused. All the economic developments, Brady Industries, those are the type of things associated with TIF districts. And again, the Yum Center is part of a TIF district as well. Those are things that I will look into extensively as auditor.
Ms. Donahue, you care to follow up there?
I do. First of all, as far as the pensions go, the auditor's role is not to fix the pensions. The auditor can't do that. The legislature is the only entity that can do that by finding other revenue sources. What the auditor will be able to do is to ensure that those programs are being properly executed. As far as enforcing the transactions and doing that sort of thing, the auditor's role is not to manage the pension system. It's not to advise on how investments should be made. It is to investigate to make sure the proper policies and procedures are in place and being followed. Beyond that, what I will be doing is first to be responsive to the needs, what comes up. I'm sure when Adam Edelin was elected auditor, he didn't expect that the first thing he'd be doing is looking into what Richie Farmer had been doing, and that would be the first thing he would be doing.
With the Kentucky Department of Agriculture.
Yes, ma'am. But the other things that I do have that I would like to focus on is auditing our electronic voting machines to make sure our votes are counted, to make sure our adversaries aren't tampering with our elections.
Is that the role of an auditor? Would that not be the role of the Secretary of State?
It is a role because it would fall under the IT audits. And we do need to modernize and expand our IT audits. It sounds boring, but if you think about how much information the state has on us, from our driver's license, date of birth, health records, so much information. If a hacker had access to that, they could be doing serious damage. And the IT system is the basis that we communicate. And audits are not, counting money. It's ones and zeros now. It's all in these IT systems. So we can't wait until an attack happens. At that point, it's too late. We have to put more emphasis on security. So we have to find the problems, fix the vulnerabilities, and fight the perpetrators.
And Ms. Goods, I'll go to you for your response about pension and the role of the auditor and looking after those pension systems.
Yeah, I'm here because I don't think that we can solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. And I'm in the pension. I have been an organizer for 120 Strong, which is a group that pushes back against the attacks on public education and the attacks on our teacher public pensions.
And some would say that would taint or influence your independence if you were selected as auditor.
Right, but just to the point of that Mr. Toby has a passion for the pension crisis, so do I, because I currently pay into it. But back to how to fix the pension, the problem is funding. Obviously, we are a revenue-strapped state. I said that before in an answer, but we really are, and it's going to take the legislature to ensure that we have funding for that. Former Representative Kay, now I guess he's a county judge executive, but I was really a fan of his pension plan and how he would tax the opioid distributors. I thought that was a great idea. But again, I'm here because I have a forward-looking vision for the auditor's office. The first thing that I really would do is, because I want to make the office more efficient, and really my vision has to do with the democratization of the office, is sort of audit the auditor's office. And what that would be would mean to bring all of the merit employees that have worked there for multiple auditors in and say, how can we make our audits more accessible to taxpayers? Right now, if you get on the website, it looks like it was made in 1994. If you are not an auditor by trade, you probably have trouble reading that. Maybe the auditors there are doing a great job with the work that they do, but a regular taxpayer who the auditor's office is supposed to serve is not doing a service for them, and that it is very hard to read and find out what the auditor's office is doing.
What's so hard to read about it? Is it the language that they're using, presentation, access?
It's not really necessarily in layman's terms. It's also, again, hard to find. The website itself is not really accessible or navigable. I think right now we live in an infographic age. Everybody gets their information on Facebook and things like that. We need to make sure that people understand that, yes, the taxpayers, not only are we ensuring that waste, fraud, and abuse is not happening out in our state and local government, but also, look, we are doing this service for you all. And so, yes, we are going to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, like we said, and find corruption.
Where is the waste, fraud, and abuse to be rooted out? Do you have some kind of suspicion about where it could be uncovered?
Well, part of my platform is also that we should expand the Safe House program, which is currently the program that the auditor's office has that I think has spanned a few auditors, where people can go and anonymously report waste, fraud, or abuse throughout the state. So again,
you would expand it how?
And ensuring that, people know about it. I mean, frankly, I think that we could do PSAs, not something that said the auditor's name where it would seem like it's political. I think that we could just do a better job of promoting it, because it almost seems like it came out and there was a big push for it whenever it first became a service. But I would say now 10 out of 10 people don't know that exists.
Right. And so knowing what the state auditor does, knowing how to find their reports, the accessibility, and being able to report any kind of waste, fraud, or abuse that a citizen might suspect or have evidence of, Are those things important to you, Ms. Donahue?
Oh, absolutely. When I managed a 50,000 person organization across the country in critical infrastructure protection, one of the main things that I did was I developed a system for improving the communication between the private and the public sector so that the people in our critical infrastructures could bring information to the local federal officials or state officials that they might have on vulnerabilities or threats that they saw. That system that I developed here in Kentucky was picked up and mandated by the FBI across the country because it was so effective. Those are the kinds of things I'm going to do. Across the state, I have talked with folks that, state employees who've said that they have seen things and they reported it to our current auditor, but they've been ignored. So we do need to improve that communication, and I have a proven track record of developing those systems and providing the venue for people to bring that to the auditor's office.
Mr. Toby, also you're aware that just like other constitutional offices and other areas of state government, they took a cut in the last budget session, and we're coming up on another, and revenues seem well, we'll just say they seem like they seem. Mm-hmm. So in the age of austere budgets, how would you still carry out the offices of the auditor in lean times?
Well, again, you have to prioritize the amount of taxpayer dollars that are at risk for the amount of staff that you have. That's why I'm emphasizing the pensions, because that's the maximum amount of tax dollar savings that we can get from this office. I think we're paying well over in excess $400 million a year in excess fees to hedge funds and private equity, many in offshore investments. And I think that can be pared down significantly just by enforcing the laws that we have. As auditor, I would do that.
And so that doesn't cross the lines with the General Assembly's responsibilities at all? Well,
these are General Assembly laws that are not being enforced, and that's what the auditor can at least bring attention and bring transparency out on these violations and hope to drive those fees down, which I think is the best way to get the most bang for the buck out of the auditor's office.
So you're not proposing structural changes or anything systemically to happen to the systems. You're just talking about from a financial standpoint how to make sure that money is protected.
Yeah, well, it's fees that you can shine the light on what I consider to be the corruption. It's the fees, the assumptions, the things that are out there. But the thing that have the direct dollar impact would be on the actual fees that are being paid by taxpayers out, that those can be reduced, I think, if we shine the light of transparency on those transactions.
So, yes, Ms. Donahue.
First of all, I like to, and I don't know if he misspoke, but the auditor's office cannot enforce the laws. The auditor's office investigates and then brings this information to law enforcement to prosecute if it's so required. But as far as finding money for the state auditor's office, first of all, I have spent a career looking at efficiencies, and I would do a systematic approach to see what efficiencies we could achieve in the auditor's office. And secondly, we can look for outside sources of funding, grants. Adam Edelin found a grant from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for testing the rape kits, the backlog that we had. So there are other sources that we have, but going to the legislature, making the case, explaining what it's needed for. Again, when we had people in Afghanistan and we did not have that access because of shutdown, I was able to find a way to make it happen. So that will never be an issue as far as executing the responsibilities of the auditor's office.
As we have a little bit less than 3 minutes remaining, I'm going to give you each just a minute to make the case for why you should get the vote for the Democratic primary and state auditor. And Mr. Toby, I'll begin with you.
Again, I believe my 25 years of direct finance and accounting experience, along with actually close to 3 years in this office itself, gives me the level of experience and qualifications needed to hit the ground running with this job. I have specific plans. I have a record of working with legislatures on pension legislation and on the pension systems themselves, serving on the KRS board. And then again, having the qualifications of a master's degree in finance accounting, I think are the things that you need in the auditor's office.
Ms. Donahue.
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here this evening. I have the experience of a nearly 30-year career of working with the Navy, with the FBI, and with the private sector. I have audited multi-million-dollar weapon systems. I protected Navy technologies, billions of dollars in technologies. And so I also have proven accomplishments. Everything I have attempted to work on, or any project I've done, has always been successful. And I have commendations from the U.S. Navy, from the Army, and from the FBI for the work that I've done. I have a Lifetime Leadership Award for the work that I did with the FBI program across the country. So I know that what I have done, it's not just a vision, it's not just a plan, it's a proven track record. I've done it, and I will continue to do it again. When I hit that office, I am qualified, and I will bring that vote, or bring that faith back to our state. And I do ask for your viewers' vote in May.
Thank you, Renee, also for having me on. As a lifelong Kentuckian, I have been an effective leader throughout my life. I have a clear and impactful vision for the auditor's office, and I'll argue I'm the only candidate up here that does. I am somebody who is committed to being a passionate watchdog for our taxpayer dollars, and I know that through executing the vision that I have for the auditor's office, we'll be able to affect positive change and ultimately start to work and show up for each other, which is what I talk about on the campaign trail in terms of getting back to a Kentucky that really works for all. I invite anybody that is watching to go to kelseydebate.com and go to my issues page and check out the strategic plan that I have for an auditor's office under me, and give me feedback.
All right. Thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Stay with us, because after a short break, we'll be back with the Democratic candidates in the primary race for state treasurer. Stay with us.
2, 3, go! My name is Jessica Kaiser. I am a preschool Head Start teacher here at Allen Elementary in Floyd County, Kentucky. I decided to become a teacher because Head Start changed my life as a parent in my child's life, and I just wanted to give that back and not only make a difference in children's lives, but the families also. KET and PBS has assisted me as a teacher by providing workshops like the PBS Kids Playful Learning Educators Training. These exercises, they give me activities for me to implement with my students. With KET and PBS, I learned new teaching techniques for the classroom. My teaching style is very hands-on, and these KET workshops provide resources that are hands-on and that can be incorporated in easy, simple ways. That really spoke to me because our children ages 3 to 5, that's how they learn, is through play. So the hands-on was really something that I could relate to and bring back into my classroom and use.